isn't too bad in Italy because you were hit badly in the beginning. So now we have our next speaker is going to be Dr. Siddhartha, who runs the Transbrahm think tank in India and has been actively supporting these monthly meetings, and is very much a polymath. He's a scientist, he's a social scientist, he's an activist. I've coined the word an intellectivist, which is an intellectual who's also an activist. So Dr. Siddhartha is an intellectivist. So do share with us your thoughts at the current time, sir.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I don't deserve that, but then you speak what you are. It's the generosity of Dr. Depan that he thinks in this manner. He is programmed to think in such a manner, and that's the reason that he showers so much amount of praise here. I'm still a learner, and I consider myself as a student of Rebecca ji, a student of Dr. Depan, a student of Murali ji. Everyone consider me as that. Well, I go on to share three things associated with whatever that we have undergone through, I mean, coming to the end of this year in whatever manner that has been possible. The first part is I do require to think. I do think that is we require to change the way that we go on to live for the purpose of building a greater amount of sustainability. That is one. The second is we require to change our orientation with respect to the environment and environmental thinking and environmental perception as well. And the third part is we require to revisit certain components that will go on to make the whole of the world more or less peaceful. Of course, that is going to be our basic aim, and with an input of a certain type of administration management skills which have been practiced in some places like Africa, some of them in Amazonian forest, some of them in India as well, and so on, so forth. Coming to the first part, that means what are the type of changes that we require to bring in our thinking so that we can go to adjust to some of these aspects like pandemics and like one pandemic that is going, that's surpassing, and by March we would have found one solution to it. But it's distinctly possible that we are going to encounter another wave of such type of a pandemic. And when we say another wave of it, this is largely because there are going to be a good number of laboratories which will either accidentally release some of these type of viruses or because of certain nefarious designs also, some of these countries, either part of a warfare, will go to release it. So we have to be prepared for that. And why is it that, how is it that we can go on to get ourselves prepared with respect to that? The first part is minimalistic living. Now, any type of a living that we are practicing it right now, that is not sustainable at all. And when we say it's not sustainable, it's largely because that is all of those aspects that go on to form the components of industrial growth, not industrialization. And I repeat it, all of those components that go on to form part of urban growth, not urbanization. Because urbanization is a special concomitant process of change that also goes on to bring about a change in the way that you're going to think, the change in the way that you're going to behave, the change that in the way that you're going to perceive human beings, change in the way that you can go on to think about treating your environment as well. There were certain problems associated with the thinking process of the people in Indus Valley civilization. That is what was responsible for allowing the entire of the civilization to become extinct as well. And there are some inherent drawbacks in the thinking of industrial growth. And industrial growth is nothing but we are going to be talking about creating more and more products, diversifying more and more products because they're going to give us more and more income. Imagine this folly, although this is not an intellectual word to be used here, but I'm going to use in a more journalistic manner. Imagine this irrationality that is going to be. When we go on to produce certain products of plastics, we're going to increase GDP. When we go on to use those things, we are increasing GDP. When we're going to take care of that environmental management to manage plastics, we are increasing GDP. Whenever we go on to pollute the environment, we are increasing the GDP. Whenever we're going to take steps to do that, we are increasing GDP. Now, when we do want to complicate our society, we are increasing GDP. When we go on to have a policing system, that we are increasing GDP. But everywhere, the culprit is going to be our peace. The culprit is going to be our sustainability. And the only solution is we are not talking about minimalistic living. Is not going to be about going back to the Stone Age or any such type of age. Minimalistic living is going to be all about how in minimum amount of requirement we can go to do it. I just going to give an example. Building of a concrete house in the rural areas of many rural areas of Africa and India is not sustainable, largely because when you are going to be building a concrete house instead of a mud house, what people are going to build in Mali or in portions of India or in portions of even Middle East as well, you are allowing them to go for an energy intensive society. And when you allow them to go for energy intensive society, you have to refurbish them, you have to supply them with all the energy needs which will be required. So minimalistic living is going to be taking control of your energy management systems. It is about taking care of your diet, whereby you have to take care of yourself. It is about building social capital so that you don't require so much amount of financial capital. It is about optimum utilization of the intellectual capital so that you don't have to go for a very high scale production as well. That is one way in which we can go to deal with such type of a pandemic, which was essentially a product of consumerism, and because we started consuming a lot of things at a breakneck pace and in a completely reckless manner, so much so that for everything we are going to be dependent on one country, on one product, on one type of a living. We can go on to ultimately whether you're going to live in a 300 square foot of a house or a 3,000 square meter of a house. The loneliness that you're going to feel is always going to be the same. It's not going to be too different. That's one. Whether you go on to wear a Rolex watch or you go on to be wearing a maybe only $5 worth of a watch or only $2, it is going to be showing the same timing also. Minimalistic living is taking care of that part and taking care of all of those nuances, all of those aspects that have a damaging effect on the psyche of the people, perception management of the people, as well as on the environment. This is the first and the foremost thing that we require to do. And it is always also going to be that is you're going to build a cushion around it yourself as well, so that no pandemic can go on to damage you in this case. Second is just coming to the second part of it. That is when we are going to be talking about the relationship between different type of countries and different type of communities. Now, why is it not that we have to start thinking in a manner that why is it not that communities can go on to take a look at and take a charge of representing them rather than any country that is a political boundary? Because a country or a state is, as we're going to be talking about, nations are different. We are talking about nation. We are talking about nationalities. Nations don't go to harm anyone because all the nations are going to be happy in themselves. Nations don't go to show a lot of abhorrence towards other one. But states, by their inherent policies, may go on to make certain things very, very nefarious. Take an example of India and Pakistan. The problem between India and Pakistan is not so much at people-to-people level as much as it is going to be at the government-to-government level. Because none of these governments want that the relationship should go on to become good. But when you go on to meet people of Pakistan, Indian people meet Pakistanis, Pakistani people meeting Indians, then the type of warmth that you're going to find it, the type of hospitality that you're going to find it, it is simply going to be mind-blowing. I have taken a class in Islamabad and I know some of these things, how hospitable these people can go on to be. And of course, when they go on to come to India and the way that they're going to treat you and the type of warmth, it is going to be seen to be believed. So at a government-to-government level, most of these problems are going to crop up. and they are the one who go on to change the perception of the people. And we have to take care of the fact that is as a part of intellectual society, what we can go on to do is that we can go on to make it sure that there is no perception war, there is no information war, and there are no perception warriors who are going to be fighting a war on behalf of their country. Most of these things are always going to be transparent. Diversity is the strength of this world. Diversity is the strength of this society. Diversity is the strength of any country, even nations as well. And it is this diversity which allows us to live in this world. As we're going to say, nature goes on to follow only one law, and that is nature knows best. For everything about which we don't know, whether we go on to send a rocket which is going to be using a fuel that is ultra dimethyl hydrogen mixed with nitric acid, the type of fume that is exhausted, it is toxic, really toxic, lethal, really lethal. Now, there may not be any need for pollution of the space to such an extent. There may not be any need for allowing so much amount of debris to be in the space, because all the debris ultimately will go to fall through the stratosphere, to the troposphere, and to the earth, and that is going to be really, really damaging. And that is largely because of the political interest. That is the political representatives. Now, that is one part which can go on to play a major role in trying to forge peace between the people. The third aspect that we are going to be talking about, that is what pandemic has taught me, is that we have to consider that disasters are going to be natural, because this is disasters that are going to have a role in the cleaning up of the environment. Our perception toward disaster is significant. Now, take one example. When we say that is the flooding goes on to take place and there has been a mass flood, is it that flooding has taken place, or we human beings have moved towards a region that was the regime of the river? A river has its way, and wherever the river has its way, stay out of it. That is what it means. Now, you're going to take example of the Congo basin where flooding takes place. People have moved towards the riverine rapid areas. You're going to take case of the classic example of a Wango basin, Yangtze-Kiang basin, Gangetic basin, Kosi river. Everywhere people have moved close to the river. Now, that was the path of the river. Now, people have to be taught in this case, and it is the job of the intellectuals to teach the people that is that sea environment has a way. The only constant in environment is going to be change. Climate will change irrespective of whatever that you do. Whether you burn fossil fuel or not, it will change. Whether you go on to build concrete houses or not, it will change. Whether you go on to spew a lot of dust particles in the atmosphere, it will go on to change. Anything that you're going to do, it has changed. And despite the fact that there were no so-called global warming, and I say so-called because global warming is a type of a politics not many of us go on to understand. Neither is it that we try to understand these things also. So now that means taking a recourse to it, we have to teach people that environment has a way, nature has a way. We have to only respect that part. We have to only understand that part. Floods don't take place. You're going to sit on the top of a volcano and then you start saying that, well, it is warm from beneath. Now that is not done. This is largely because a volcano also has a rule and a law to follow in this case. So when we leave nature to nature, nature always goes to take care of it. You're going to talk about global warming. You only allow 1 year of a rainfall to take place. I repeat it, 1 year of rainfall to take place. Don't go on to spew any amount of a carbon dioxide 1 year. What this rainfall will going to do is it will mix with the atmospheric carbon dioxide, convert it into H2CO3 carbonic acid and fix it in the soil. All global warming and other gases are gone, completely gone, and the solution is going to be forever. It's as simple as that. So we have to respect simplicity in this case. Simplicity of a thought, simplicity of action, simplicity. Of course, it is easier said than done, but then intellectualism is all about simplicity. What we all intellectuals do is that we try to simplify things. What we all intellectuals do is that we try to carve out a conclusion out of a very complex phenomenon, and that is the real work of the intellectuals. These are the three conclusions that I have drawn, that I have thought of it. it has been based on observation, not on any research paper of sorts. And that is a realization of it in a simplistic manner. That is what we think, what we say, and what we do. There must be a complete congruence, and if there is a congruence, the world will be a much more peaceful place to live. It will be without any problems also, and if there is, that is always going to be better. That is what had been my observation in this case. Thank you so much.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Siddhartha. That was very rich. I think I heard you just solve a number of problems. You just solved the problem of global warming. And we've got a request that you should repeat it, because what I think I heard you say is if the entire planet stopped pumping out carbon dioxide, so no cars run, no planes, no fires. I mean, I'm not quite sure how you'd achieve that, because obviously every little fire here in France which heat homes is pumping it out. But if theoretically you could stop all that and let it rain naturally, then it would put all the carbon back in the soil. I'm not, surely, I mean, with all due respect, if it was that simple, given that the United Nations Environment Programme and the panel on climate change have been struggling with this for the last 30 years, surely they would have thought of that. And if you do have such a brilliant idea, can you please write to me, put it in writing in a letter, and I'll forward it to the panel on climate change. But was that your idea? Have I done it justice?
May I respond to that? May I respond to that? Yeah. Indeed, that is the idea. See, 3 months of the initial pandemic period when there was a lockdown, all of you people must have observed, whether it goes on to England, whether it goes on to the United States, you found it very close to that of nature. The air was cleaner. The whole of the place was known for the habitat of all of these animals. They came wandering around your courtyard and other places. And you also found that the water went on to be cleaner. Your health was going to be very, very good in this case. Now, we are only saying that is that if we have to solve the problem of excessive amount of carbon dioxide. Now, let me remind you, Dr. Defern, that is, let's say we don't go on to put carbon dioxide into the atmosphere by running cars or by going for production of products and things like that. Don't you think that still there the amount of carbon dioxide can go to increase? One volcanic eruption, and the amount of carbon dioxide that can go to find its way into the atmosphere will be 200 times more than what we have overall accumulated in the last 1,000 or 2,000 years of a time. So we don't have a hand in those things. That's number one. Let's accept that part. One Yellowstone National Park volcanic activity, and the other is going to be taking place in Bolivia, that can going to spew so much amount of a carbon dioxide that will be unimaginable. Now, what I'm saying is that rainwater has an inherent capacity to dissolve carbon dioxide. Lower the temperature, the greater is the dissolution of carbon dioxide. So when rainwater falls through the atmosphere, it goes on to undergo a reaction, that is H2O plus CO2, that leads to the formation of carbonic acid. It's a weak carbonic acid. And carbonic acid goes on to be acting as a nutrient for the soil. So all the carbonic acid will go on to come to the soil and go on to get itself fixed in that region. So the carbon dioxide content of the atmosphere will be withdrawn. It's as simple as that. I repeat it. It may not be a matter of 1 year, maybe 1.5, maybe 2 years, but it is going to be as simple. It is because we don't want to think about simplicity. That's the reason I talked about in the beginning. That is, we have to go for a minimalistic lifestyle, and that is simplistic lifestyle. What we see, what we think, and what we do must be in complete congruence. And any action that we're going to do, that is our inherent aim is to generate some amount of a currency finance. I repeat, currency finance. Otherwise, we in form of a capital, we have nature as a capital. We have our thinking that acts as a capital. We have our friendship that is social capital. We have our health that is going to be acting as a capital. Why only think of money as a capital? Money is only one small part of it. And we can go to generate money only at the cost of degrading our environment. The moment we start taking a look at it, things will be much more simpler, much more easier. It is going to be as simple as we have talked about. There is no need for a Copenhagen summit where you're going to burn tons and tons of carbon dioxide to organize that conference. You can go on to imbibe this simplicity in yourself by adopting a minimalistic lifestyle. That is what I say.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. And like I say, if you want to put that in writing to me, I will pass it on. Okay, so that's excellent. And you also talked about rethinking capitalism, and part of the problem of the planet is, of course, economics and capitalism and how we can reform that. I'm reminded of the Bhutanese approach. They talk about the gross national happiness of the country, not the gross national product. And you rightly pointed out that excess is seen as wealth. But Thoreau said, the great American intellectivist, he said, a man is rich in proportion to the things he does not need. So he influenced Gandhi to make us look at the other way. Our spiritual capital is actually the important thing. So the Zen master with his hut, with his one bowl, is actually infinitely wealthy. So how can we get society to know that, to understand that, and get to this question of minimalistic living that you talk about? So thank you for your comments, very helpful. I think we're going to move to Sheila from England, who
might I add something?
Sheila, would you like to
hear me?
comment at this point?
Yeah, I think somebody's trying to speak first. Is it Rebecca?
Yeah, it's me, but my internet is really, really terrible, so it keeps breaking up. I don't know if you can hear me all right.
Yeah, we can, yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to add something regarding what Dr. Siddhartha said. I just wanted to suggest a really, really interesting book that I've read some time ago called What We Think About When We Try Not to Think About Global Warming. And it talks about environmental psychology. And it's really, really interesting because it analyzes how, although we have so much knowledge regarding climate change, people are still, denying the problems that we're facing, and there is still, a lot of lack of collaboration, I guess. So this book basically analyzes the psychological, cognitive, evolutionary processes that people experience when thinking about global warming, and it's really interesting. So I just wanted to point it out if anybody wants to read it.
Do you know the author, Rebecca?
Yeah, I think he was called Perespin something, I think. But I can put in the chat. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, thank you for that intervention. That's a huge issue. We could spend a whole year discussing the pros and cons of different solutions to.
May I add something?
Yeah.
One of the first paradigms on environmental thinking was one of these books that was written. That was a non-fiction book. It was not theoretical. It was The Silent Spring. I assume that all of you must have gone through it. It was the tale of a river that was bearing all the brunt of pesticide deposition, its abuse, and everything. And that is why it was called as Silent Spring. Now, the one book that the lady talked about, Miss Ciara talked about, that is one book that is having a maximum amount of a co-relationship with those type of ideas. And these ideas relate to environmentalism. Ultimately, we have started guiding ourselves with that environmental movement, where we do going to think that environment reigns supreme, despite the fact that we keep on reinforcing our viewpoint that we are in absolute control. We can go into control with the satellites and everything. But the moment you are hit by a 340-kilometer high-speed tropical cyclone, that is technology doesn't go to work in this space. The moment you go on to see that is a tornado goes into rip you open completely, technology doesn't go to work in this space. And you know that we are waiting for an Arctic vortex to break itself through and again go on to lower the temperature of Washington DC and New York by at least minus 20 to 30 degrees centigrade. Technology again doesn't go to work in this place. So let's accept the miniaturization of technology in this case. We maybe for our own ego may go to satisfy it by saying it so. But then, as I said, that is, do whatever, climate will have to change. It is bound to change. There is no way. You can't go on to change the revolution of the earth. As to winds that are going to be coming, that is a part of it, because we are talking about climatic change. That's the way it goes. And change is the essence of it. If climate would not have changed, can you imagine? Mammals wouldn't have ruled the earth at all. It was because a climate went on to become inherently bad for the reptiles, inherently hostile to the reptiles, that the mammalian evolution took place. So why is it that we should be complaining even if the climate is changing? Take it ethically. If you're going to take it ethically, it is the prerogative of nature to change itself. And if the climate is changing, we are the product of the change, and there will be something else that will be product of a change. Let it be. Leave it to nature.
Sure. No, thank you again. So we've got many topics on the agenda, and Dr. Siddhartha has introduced the idea of nature back forefront. I mean, I run the Global Green University, and I've been a green philosopher involved with eco-philosophy for many years. And there are many questions about how humans interact with the environment. And, you know, is the pandemic the sort of wake-up call for humanity? There are huge issues to discuss. Can we ask Sheila, because we're sort of running out of time, we have a few other speakers to get through. I'd like to hear Sheila's comments so far. She's just been involved in a, she's an astrologer and a philosopher and an educator for many years. She was a school governor and the type of person that comes to inspect if you're doing well in school. How are we doing on the planet, Sheila, if you were inspecting?
I'm also a psychotherapist, so I studied psychotherapy for 9 years. So I'm, at the moment, the state of mind that I'm in is I'm trying to think about ordinary people, not intellectuals, people who are not educated and are very confused and in a state emotionally about the world and what's happening at the moment. And the topics that people are concerned with, ordinary people, I say ordinary people, I mean people who don't read widely, who don't have these kinds of discussions. The majority of people, that they're thinking about money, they're thinking about global warming, as has just been discussed. They're thinking about education and whether it really works anymore. They're thinking about computer games, social media, this massive technological revolution that we've had, and nobody really knows what to make of it. So I wonder if our position, our place, our responsibility as well-read people is to be able to convey the knowledge that mankind has about all these issues, but to manifest it for people in very simple terms, which is exactly what Mr. Siddhartha was just saying. He was saying, let's keep it simple. Let's try and forget all this idea about this and this idea about that. Somehow or other, we need to be able to boil it all up and get the base metal at the end, you know, make gold in a sense. And so I've been reading very widely and researching because I think I have something to say about all of this, but I haven't quite decided what it is, because I'm trying to find out what the big minds are saying. So I've been reading anthropology, and the fact that, I forget his name, but he's a very well-known anthropologist who's written about mankind and where we're going. And he actually spoke to Bank of America recently, all the top people in Bank of America, because my son works there and he told me about it. And it was very handy, that conversation I had with my son, because the banks are starting to think, what is happening with people? They're glued to these computers and they only pop down to get food, and then they play games, and then they get hungry again and they play more games. This is a phenomena that people are thinking about, you know, what is happening to certain elements of society all over the world. So I started to read anthropology, and there's a very good book called Sapiens, and at some point I'll find the author for you. I can't remember his name at the moment. But I've also been reading heterodox economics, because I feel I should know about some new ideas about how we could run the globe economically. And all of it is sifting through my brain. And I do think that Mr. Siddhartha has made some very good points. And that's why I wrote on the chat that it is a well-known fact that concrete houses are a very quick way of giving people a roof over their head. But it's one of the single biggest pollutants of the planet. And another thing that Mr. Siddhartha mentioned was nations, and how nations live, and cultural differences and things like that. And my point is that nations are run by politicians, and politicians make decisions for us. And we need to think about that. We need to think about, who are we voting for? What is the choice? And why is it that really, really, really intelligent people aren't going in for politics? There are many reasons for that. One of them, I think, is because we don't value politics. And so politicians don't get paid that much compared to other jobs that they could have. And all of these are huge topics that I think are part of what we might call the New World Order. And because I've also worked as an astrologer for about 35 years, I can explain the astrological side of it, but I won't go into the details of that. But basically, the planetary configurations at the moment convey that there is massive social change taking place, but it could take place over the next 10 years, slowly but surely. And a couple of planets have now moved into Aquarius, which is what this big planetary thing was on the 21st of December. And the age of Aquarius is gradually moving in. And that means that this is the word of the people. The people need to be informed better. The people need to be able to think about these massive topics. And the only way, I feel, for the mass of people to really be able to think things through logically, is to be able for us to boil things down to the very simple ideas of what we need to do, which is what Mr. Siddhartha was saying. You know, we can't keep debating, well, there's this and then there's that thing and there's this other thing. We'll be here debating it until we die. Somehow or other, we have to attempt, that's what I'm trying to do in my little way, is to kind of think, how would I convey all this to somebody that just wants a simple solution, you know? And the other thing that I was going to talk about is that because I work as a psychotherapist 2 days a week, and the rest of the time, if somebody wants a horoscope done, I'll do a horoscope for them. And about 8 weeks ago, I had a guy in Denmark contacted me, and I did his horoscope. And he's in his 40s, and he's got a degree in political something. He's got an MA, and he used to be an actor in Denmark, and he made a lot of money, so he doesn't really have to work now, even though he's only in his 40s. And he's started a television station, and last week it went global, and he is absolutely fed up with the propaganda that a lot of TV stations churn out, and I include the BBC. The BBC is so biased and so limited. All we hear about in England is COVID, 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 and a little bit of Brexit. We don't know what the rest of the world is doing anymore. And that can't be right. So he started this new TV station. And as a result of me doing his horoscope, I now speak to him every week on Skype. We just do a little message to each other. And then if there's a topic we need to discuss, we discuss it. So I'm really interested to hear what all the people on here have to say, because if they don't mind, I'll just pass their names on to him, because I think he's going to be very significant. I think that he is a very intelligent guy who absolutely understands that the ordinary people need to have a voice, because a lot of ordinary people, I keep saying ordinary, what other words can I describe the mass population as? You know, the world needs to have a voice, and they don't really have it at the moment. They have Facebook and all kinds of social media, but it isn't really a thinking voice. And this guy in Denmark, he wants people to have a thinking voice. He wants to get people that think about these big issues to talk about their simple ideas, so that the mass of the population can start saying, oh, this is a bit different. This is interesting. This is exciting. So I just thought I'd tell you all about that, because I think it's very exciting to be involved in.
Thank you, Sheila, very much. Can I make a suggestion that you invite him to the next meeting, the Danish
I will,
guy?
actually, yeah.
When I send you the Zoom codes for next month, it'll be the end of January. Please invite him.
Yeah, if you could let me know as soon as possible what the date is, then obviously...
It's always the 30th of the month, Sheila.
Okay.
30th of the month. You can tell him already, right? So moving on, because time is running out, we want to hear Una's little comment, and then we'll go to Priscilla and hear what's happening in the States, the big country across the pond. Una, you'll have to unmute to ask your point.
Thanks, Thomas. I really just wanted to ask questions, because I'm a great one for asking questions, which is why I would love to be a presenter on that new TV station. It's like manna to my ears, because that is just what I'm looking for. And Sheila, is there any chance you could recommend me to this guy, or we could have a chat? Because I really feel that's my future. And I actually have my own YouTube channel, and I'm very much into the whole alternative commentary about this COVID thing. And I have very interesting views about it, but I think I'm a fair person in that I really like to have a balanced debate about everything. But I would love to connect with a new station, because we were talking about this in Ireland, where I come from. But there's nobody out there with sufficient funds, and all the bandwidths have been taken up by other people, by globalists. Even the radio station bandwidths have been bought by those who are proposing a certain agenda, which means that anybody who's got an alternative viewpoint has to do it in the alternative media space, which means having your own YouTube channel, with the risk of it being deplatformed, which has happened to so many people. So
absolutely, that's exactly it.
Manna to my ears that there was somebody out there with the resources to actually have their own TV station, because we absolutely need an alternative. Mainstream media is bought and sold. I mean, there is no doubt about that. That's my strong view, because of the narrative that they have been proposing here with regard to COVID. I mean, it's nothing more than mass hypnosis.
Absolutely.
Creating appalling fear. I mean, it's the whole problem, reaction, solution. And I mean, I could talk about this for hours, because so many things were raised here today, and Thomas knows my views on them. But I know that there was talk about the whole one world government idea that Dr. Swami Nathan said. I would have a little bit of a concern about that, because of what I know about the globalists and technocrats who are currently bringing in the transhumanist agenda here with people now. We're actually connected to our phones. It's not possible for a human being now to walk out of their house without having their phone in their hand. This is all part of a transhumanist process and project, which is very, very damaging for us on so many levels. But there's also the fact that with what Klaus Schwab is doing in the World Intellectual Forum, it's bringing
the World Economic Forum.
I beg your pardon. The World Economic Forum, which is about bringing in this great economic reset, which is leading to a one world government where we will all be controlled and corralled. Even the way we think will be controlled. They're bringing in now all this hate speech legislation, which means you can't even think a certain way. Like, we're talking here about Minority Report. If anyone has seen the movie, you know, you just think about committing a crime and you'll be arrested. Like, this is the world that we are heading towards if we don't call a halt soon. And we have to stop it. So I feel quite strongly about this, as you probably can gather, and I could talk about it for hours.
And I think,
I think Thomas would get very nervous. So, you know, but anyway, I think you get the gist of where I'm coming from with all of this. But I would love to talk to that guy if he was interested in talking to me. And I'd love to be a presenter. I have some media training as well. And my background is in law, so I can talk about a lot of different things. And I've done.
Okay. Shall I, because we're running out of time, can I quickly just say to you, Una, of course I will.
Thank you.
Now, this is the situation. It's really exciting what's happened. He only started this idea about 9 weeks ago, and everything has fallen in his lap. He's actually got sponsorship from a lot of big food companies, not chlorinated chicken. We're talking real food companies, and he's just got all this money just coming at him. And I'm hoping that now that I haven't spoken to him because of Christmas, but I'm going to speak to him tomorrow or the next day, and he's just beginning to get his act together. And he's realizing there's so much, this could be so huge that he could get confused, bogged down, have a lot of silly people on there. So he's at the stage where he always interviews people before he has them on the program. And then he makes sure that the people that are going to say something have got something significant to contribute, even if it's a simple thing, if you understand me. And everything that you have said is absolutely what he thinks, absolutely what I think, absolutely what lots of people think. And he has been threatened to be removed from Facebook, but they haven't removed him because they can't, because he's not political.
Brilliant.
He just wants to provide a media platform.
Crying out for
thank you.
Crying out for the truth community. This is so important. I mean, I'm thrilled to hear about this. This is wonderful news. And if this is managed properly, this could be global. We need to know.
Una, can I suggest that you put into the chat your private conversation with Sheila now? I want to move on to our next speaker because we're running out of time. Okay. Much as I love both of you, can we hear from Priscilla in America? It's very important we get a perspective on the American political process. She's been involved in organizing some amazing gatherings for the International Restorative Council. Priscilla, can you give us a report on your work? And what's the mood in the States now? Is there going to be a Trump coup, or is Biden going to succeed?
I think democracy is going to hold up, and Biden will end up being the president. We're all assuming that. But I want to thank everybody for your amazing comments, and Dr. Siddhartha and Sheila, thank you for the ideas about simplicity. I'm reminded of the 60s term, live simply so others can simply live. And I think that, you know, that phrase really captures a lot of what Dr. Siddhartha was saying. One of the things that we're doing is we've been funded by the JAMS Foundation, which is a conflict resolution foundation in the United States. And what we're doing is an online cyberbullying program where students are working toward interrupting cyberbullying. And of course, everything is online now. And we don't do anything in person here. Everything, we're pretty much on lockdown as things are getting worse right now in the States. So we continue to do everything online. And we're starting to do some research on what students are thinking about. And they are doing lots more gaming, as Sheila was pointing out. That's a really big part of their life right now. But when we ask the question, are you seeing more cyberbullying? They're actually responding in some cases that they're seeing more empathy because they realize how many people are hurting, and they realize everybody in the world. And this is a school in Queens, in New York, in New York City, where there's huge diversity. People from all over the world are at this school. Every religion you can think of, every language. And this is their response. Many of them don't have adequate internet. Many of them keep their cameras off because they don't want people to see that they're working from their kitchen, or they don't want people to see their homes. So that's been a really big issue for us. I know we're limited on time, but I do want to say that a lot of what we teach in conflict resolution in elementary schools can be applied to any kind of world conflict. I mean, and so that concept of simplicity, to me, if you know something really, really well, you can simplify it and teach it really, really easily. And I think that's important to remember. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about this. I have some media background as well, and I would love to hear more about this new station. And if you could put that in the chat, Sheila, that would be wonderful. And again, thank you all for your amazing comments, and Happy New Year to everyone. Yeah. I'll stop there.
Okay, well, thank you, Priscilla, for your intervention there. Is Dr. Arun ready to share? You were going to share some thoughts towards the end of our meeting. We're reaching towards the end. And Dr. Arun is an expert in brain science and so on. I'm not sure if you can hear me. If not, maybe we could go to Katyeni, who is joining us from the center of India. Can you hear me?
Yes. Am I audible?
Yes. So would you like to just explain a bit about your work, and you could maybe talk about this new course we're going to be teaching together?
Yeah, okay. So, just put on. My name is Katyeni Singh, and I, in collaboration with Dr. Thomas, we have started and initiated a course on non-killing. So that course would be basically religion, peace, and non-killing. So the idea is to advocate the important and peaceful concepts which are present in all these religious teachings, and as well to advocate the philosophy of non-killing. The idea of non-killing was originally developed by Glenn D. Page in his work of non-killing global political science. So from there on, we had taken this principle, and after that we have worked on it, and I have developed a non-killing index on it also. So now we want to teach this subject. We want to teach this as a subject in university as well as in school level. So currently we have planned to introduce it as a certificate course at our university. The religious teachings would be taken up by Dr. Thomas, and I would be mainly looking into the non-killing principles. What is the definition, and what are the principles of it? So that's the core idea right now, just to introduce it to the students. So basically, why we have introduced non-killing is the philosophy of peace has been propounded for a long period of time. Now we wanted to make it more specific. We wanted to make it more focused study. So that's why we have stressed more on non-killing of human beings. So it's more related to homicidal deaths, suicidal deaths, capital punishment. So that's the core idea of this course.
And what's the university? Just tell them where this is, how they can find it.
Yes, the university's name is Jagran Lake City University, and we are operating online. So we are teaching, we are still operating, and in all probability, we will be starting the course from the month of March.
Right.
It's situated in Bhopal in India. Yeah, it's
You're
in
speaking
Bhopal.
in Bhopal, aren't you? Yeah.
Yes, I'm speaking from Bhopal.
Where there was that terrible accident, which brings us back to environmental responsibility.
Yes,
And,
Bhopal cash tragedy.
yeah, that was a tragedy, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. Okay, so now who hasn't spoken that wants to? Sean in Ireland, you've been very quiet. Are you with us? Would you like to comment a bit on? We haven't talked about Brexit and how it's going to affect Ireland and the reunification of Ireland, all that stuff. These are big issues. What are British and Irish intellectuals doing about this? It seems to me that, you know, Brexit is an anti-intellectual project. What are your views on that? Okay, I think Sean isn't there. So, okay, well, if anyone wants to speak a few final words, please chat to me. We've reached slightly over our allotted 2 hours. I'm just going to summarize an ending to this meeting. Thank you to everyone that's spoken. We've had a lively, you know, exchange. Obviously, we could have more in-depth discussion. I mean, the World Intellectual Forum is open for business here in both Europe and in, well, from India. So we should be writing to each other. I'm going to send a little, I'll send the recording of this conversation to everyone. And, you know, we can exchange ideas in writing. I'm a great believer in writing. As you know, I've published about 50 books, and I really enjoyed doing my PhD. I encourage everyone on here to do a PhD if you haven't done one already, just for the intellectual pleasure of grappling with difficult issues. I've come in my book recently, I'm working on this question of religious and mathematics because it's a challenge. You know, I know a lot more about religious studies than I do about mathematical sciences, but I'm finding out more, and I'm trying to open up new ways of thinking which can solve this schizophrenia in among the intelligentsia, probably ever since Descartes, who was a great mathematician, but probably not such a great philosopher, because he said that the world could be divided into things of spirit and then things of the material world that can be measured. And he created this whole idea that things of spirit, you know, they can be left to themselves. I don't agree with that. I think we have to now attend to the spiritual dimension of things, which includes the ethical, the moral, and the intellectual, with as much fine detail to attention as we do to the material things. Scientists at the University of Oxford can tell you every little part of a working cell. They can look down electron microscopes and analyze it endlessly, and they publish their papers in scientific journals and describe these minutiae, but they can't tell you what conscience is, or what feelings are, or what love is. And I think the planet will be destroyed if we don't start focusing our minds and our intellects and our sciences on those more metaphysical and ethical and spiritual dimensions. You know, and kids now are being brought up in schools to be very clever, to become very good scientists, you know, engineers, whatever, but then go on and make nuclear weapons and make new levels of information warfare and cyber warfare possible. I mean, although it's great we've got this technology, we can be online, it can also be misused. And there's been recently an attack on the States. It's happening all the time. Iran and Israel are doing cyber warfare as we speak. Well, we at the World Intellectual Forum 3 years ago pioneered the first ever cyber peace treaty. I can send that to anyone that's interested. And it was signed by a lot of us, including our chair, Dr. Swaminathan, and our Russian colleague, and myself and others. And what we're saying, you know, if this is where warfare is going, it's going into information warfare and knowledge warfare, then we have to purify that and get a peace treaty, because human beings are very it's a constant race. H.G. Wells said civilization is a race between education and catastrophe. This was a motto when my institute was set up. It was one of our founding mottos. And it seems to me that humanity is constantly inventing ways to avoid wisdom. The word we use in English is ignorance. Ignorance is an active force. And as Dominic and I have been discussing in the sociology of ignorance, you know, there is a Thanatos principle Freud talks about, the death instinct. And we cultivate this ignorance of things. So that's who we're up against. We're up against the anti-intellectual instinct in human beings. And we have to somehow make wisdom so attractive, so beautiful, that people prefer that to ignorance. You know, to me, the computer game industry is just a dumbing down process. It's very clever people making lots of money by people getting addicted to stupidity. So we need peace games. Why can't we create internet games that kids can do where they, you know, do creative solutions to problems instead of shooting guns? So these are all the kinds of issues that we need to think through. And please, you know, go away from this meeting with positive energy. Let's stay focused in optimism. We are the counterforce to the Thanatos principle. It's ironic, I published the only academic journal in the world on the nature of love, which anyone that wants to write an article on the nature of love from your specialism, from your field of knowledge, please submit it. I will be doing the 14th issue in this coming year, 2021. And, you know, I still think love can save the day, but it's ironic that science and so on hasn't really taken an interest very much. And there's only one journal on the nature of love, and that's my institute's. So I think the World Intellectual Forum could you know, attend to this question. Right, I think unless anybody's got, does Gila want to add something from Israel? Would you like to add anything about the love of God and the Middle East? You've helped inspire the Golden Gate project, which I've not talked about much. This is the vision that we can get Temple Mount opened as a peace venue and for all faiths, and for humanity as a whole. This is the idea of the Collective Messiah project, which we've set up a little group called WMASC to help with. Any final words from anyone? I think Rebecca wants to say a few concluding words.
Yes, I just wanted, yeah. I won't turn on my video because otherwise it will clash, like my internet will clash completely. I just wanted to say a few things connecting a few points to what you've just said, basically. And one is regarding video games. Now I can't think of it, but I can prepare it for next time. I've come across a few video games that try to build collaboration and global sustainability, and you know, that try to use the good things of video games, because I mean, I'm not into video games, but like there is something good in that as well, I guess. So they try to exploit that to foster collaboration and sustainability. I have to look it up because I can't remember the website where I've seen this, but there are some like positive video games that try to enhance people's problem-solving skills and stuff like that. The second thing I wanted to say regards Ireland, actually, and Brexit, because I read, like, you probably already know this, but I just wanted to point it out because I think it's an interesting thing. I've read an article saying that within the deal, there seems to be, like, I mean, the UK seems to want to withdraw from the Erasmus program in the deal they're trying to reach for Brexit. But as far as I know, I think Ireland will keep like an exchange program through the Erasmus network with Northern Ireland, and I think that's very interesting because it might, you know, be very much connected to a potential reunification in the future, because you know, such I guess such initiatives can foster collaboration, and I don't know, it might help with what you were talking about and the possibility of a future reunification, which might not happen immediately, but there is a chance that it will in the future, given the instability brought upon by Brexit. And then the third thing I wanted to say, and that's the last one, is that I hope I'll manage to have my boyfriend here next time as well, because he might contribute to the whole COVID discussion, because he's finishing his PhD in biotechnology, and he is working mainly on the hepatitis virus, which is not directly connected, but he's recently started a new small project on a modified virus with similar characteristics to the COVID one, and maybe he might be, I don't know, he might bring some I don't know, clarity on some issues, I guess. I mean, he's very introverted, so I'm not sure he will want to join, but if I manage to convince him, it might be interesting, I guess.
Okay, thank you very much, Rebecca, and do say hello to your scientific boyfriend. I think, you know, there's a whole other conversation that the World Intellectual Forum should have about the pandemic. I've taken the view that we want to know exactly where it comes from. And as you know, and you and I exchanged work on this, I've written to various authorities, the Pontifical Commission for Science, and I've tried to get the UN to set up an investigation into the exact etiology. The problem with this is that the Chinese are not really being very transparent. And they've just arrested and sentenced to prison for 4 years a doctor who actually blew the whistle, you know, announcing the pandemic. So we've got a political problem with the suppression of knowledge and information by political structures, combined with a medical emergency for the planet. This is a dual function catastrophe. I would say we have a pandemic of ignorance on this planet, and that's what we as intellectuals should be concerned with. And our dear friend Dr. Siddhartha in India talks about knowledge management. That's a critical phrase. We have to somehow steer knowledge in the direction of wisdom. You see, knowledge is ethically neutral. Knowledge can be how to make death camps and, you know, cyanide pills and whatever. Wisdom is knowledge plus ethics. And ethics comes from a spiritual conscience. It comes from awakening the buddhi, which is the Sanskrit word for intellect. And you know, we as the World Intellectual Forum, we're really trying to develop that buddhi nature in us all. And Sheila's right, it's not just for the elites, not just for the so-called intellectuals. It's for everybody. Everybody has this buddhi nature. Every human has a mind, a cosmic mind, but they're not taught how to access it. The schools dumb people down, the universities do the same. They create well-trained robots to just do their own little bit of knowledge. So if we want to have a solution to the pandemic of ignorance, you know, that's what the job of the World Intellectual Forum is, to reawaken our potential enlightenment. So look, with those words, can I say thank you so much for joining? Can I also say we do have a journal. The World Intellectual Forum has a journal. I produced it last year. And if any of you want to write at greater length about any of the topics we've discussed, I'd be very happy to print that, put it in the next issue of the journal. Because, you know, intellectual work is serious. It's important stuff we're dealing with. We can't deal with it in a short Zoom conference every month, although that's useful. Let's do some serious stuff. So put your pens to paper, guys, and put this in writing. Okay, so look, love to everyone, and let's open the Golden Gate and build the Universal Peace Tower soon and manifest the true Buddhic nature of each and every one of the people on this planet, because that's our entitlement. And let's reverse this pandemic of ignorance and fear. Okay. Shalom. Blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, all of you. Happy Christmas that's just gone, and Happy New Year to everyone. And those of us that are affected, may we have a tolerable Brexit, and may Scotland become independent soon, and may it all end happily. Yeah. Amen.